Once again, the Minnesota Wild take care of business against the Edmonton Oilers by a 5-3 score. We are recapping the action on today's Locked On Wild postcast.
You are Locked On Wild postcast, part of Locked On Sports Minnesota, your team every day.
Minnesota Wild come away with a 5-3 win over the Edmonton Oilers. We are recapping the action on tonight's Locked On Wild postcast. Seth Topal joined by Kevin Gorg. Kevin, for whatever reason, right off the bat, this Wild team has some pretty good success against Edmonton. They've beat them now 7 straight times, and it seems like it's crazy with Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl that a lot of the games really haven't been that close between these two teams.
Yeah, it's weird because Edmonton's been able to make a run in the playoffs as recent as last year. They win against good teams all over this league, but for whatever reason, within this series, the Wild have dominated. Doesn't matter if they play here in St. Paul or up in Edmonton, and it was good to see Minnesota take advantage of the schedule. I mean, the Blackhawks last night tested this Edmonton team, forced their coach to play some of their big guns a lot of minutes. The Wild are going to be on the short side of that scheduling this weekend when they play a back-to-back in Dallas with a long flight in between. So tonight they took advantage of it. I thought they played a smart game. I thought the Wild got better as the game went on, and I thought the right players, the players you needed to have big games with Brodin not on the ice, did, specifically the Ek line, and of course your superstars led by Kaprizov. But not an easy matchup when you don't have 25 on the ice. So getting those 2 points, I think, was big. And now you can win on Saturday against the Ducks and end up this homestand 5-2, which looks pretty darn good right now.
Well, and the other part about it, too, is that it seemed like that power play goal for Edmonton early gave them some jump, and you kind of had the sense of, this might have given them a little bit of a spark. But after that, the Wild picked things up. They cleaned things up pretty well, and they shut that top line down. Those guys are always going to get their points, but they got them early, and the Wild were able to shut them down after that.
Yeah, you give Edmonton a couple early power plays, so they start feeling good. You get back on your heels. You mentioned it, Seth. The Oilers get that goal, and it's a recipe for trouble. But to Minnesota's credit, they didn't panic. They didn't leave their game plan. They were very physical. I thought that was a real point of emphasis with the way they played tonight, the extra physical play by some of the big guys like Foligno and Reeves, I think really paid dividends in the third period when the Oilers looked like they were completely out of gas.
Let's talk a little bit about Ryan Reeves. We haven't had a chance to chat about that since the trade was made, and had a chance to play on the fourth line tonight after getting a chance to play with Foligno and Eriksson Ek earlier. What do you think of what Reeves has brought to this team so far in terms of toughness, physicality, but more importantly, veteran presence as well?
Yeah, Bill Guerin mentioned it. He thought the room needed a little bit of a jump and maybe a little more energy. And this guy brings that. And right away, day number one, big smile on his face. He's very charismatic. He's outgoing, kind of a big brother to some of those younger players. And I think everybody got a little taller in that lineup. And you saw some nights, and again, Foligno's been banged up this year, but you definitely saw some nights where teams were taking liberty with the Wild's superstar players like Kaprizov and Zuccarello. And this is absolutely going to be a deterrent to that. Teams are going to think twice before they go out there, like Drew Doughty did in LA, and cause havoc with number 97. And so I think there's strategy with this move on the ice for sure. But, I think the off-ice stuff, the personality, the leadership, the way that I think he's going to really help this room kind of come alive. And it feels like a team right now. A certain move by the general manager saying, all right, boys, it's time to kick it in the butt. And so far, so good.
It was an interesting story for both goalies tonight. It felt like Marc-Andre Fleury got better as the game went on. Jack Campbell started off pretty good, but boy, he was shaky, and credit to the Wild for continuing to attack him the entire night.
Yeah, you're right. He looked a little shaky in periods 2 and 3, and Minnesota kind of picked up on that, and they started to really bring traffic to the net and get pucks from distance to that blue paint, make him handle the puck, and you saw some nice deflections. You got some good rebound looks. You saw Jordan Greenway, I thought maybe his best game of the year, have a couple of good chances to score. One was a big stop by Campbell. One was a short side, high bar off the post. So, yeah, I really liked the way the Wild attacked in periods 2 and 3. I didn't like their first period, but as I mentioned earlier, they didn't panic, and they certainly got better as the game went on.
Sam Steele with the goal and continuing to look like a guy who is having some fun out there with Kirill Kaprizov and Matt Zuccarello. And more importantly, is earning himself more games as that number one center with the more games like this he stacks together.
Yeah, Ryan Hartman hasn't practiced, so it doesn't look like he's close to coming back. And so to not have to have Freddy Gaudreau on that top line and to allow him to play a more significant role with Matt Boldy on that line is huge. And the question was, could Sam Steele elevate his play? And so far, he has answered it with a resounding yes. This guy was a high-end draft pick for Anaheim. You can see he clearly has skill, and now he's got some confidence and some jump to go with it. And when you play with players like Kaprizov and Zuccarello, they're going to get so much attention that you're going to end up getting open. He did that tonight, and he made the most of his opportunity. And I think he continues to get better game by game, and that is huge right now for the Minnesota Wild.
Wild win tonight by a score of 5-3 to improve to 11-9-2 on the season. A big road trip on the way, so we will discuss the games coming up this weekend, as well as trying to get a sense of where some of the Wild's injured players are at as they try to get a little more healthy. More of our Locked On Wild postcast is coming up after a word from our sponsors. Tonight's Locked On Wild postcast is brought to you by betonline.net. They are your number one source for sports betting info, plus stats, news, and analysis. You can get the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there. From football to basketball to soccer and esports, they've got it all at betonline.net. And if you love sports podcasts, you can find those at BetOnline as well. They are always the fastest and easiest way to get your betting fix. So head over to their website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and the action at BetOnline, where the game starts. Minnesota Wild win by a score of 5-3. Our Locked On Wild postcast continues. Seth Topal and Kevin Gorg. Kevin, a long road trip coming up. The weekend starts with a game against the Anaheim Ducks, followed by a game on Sunday against the Dallas Stars. And we'll talk about Dallas in a second, but this is an intriguing game for the Wild because you often see teams kind of look ahead to, hey, we got a big game coming up against a team on Sunday, and then some weird things happen in the game before that. So a Ducks team that is not having a great season, but one that the Wild can't overlook coming up on Saturday.
Yeah, you got to bank those 2 points and end the homestand 5-2. It's a much tougher game on Sunday. Dallas has a great team. They're off to a really good start. Their goaltender, Jake Ottinger, who played over at Lakeville North, is a terrific story. Kind of, feeding off what he did last year in the playoffs is kind of backboning this big start by the Dallas Stars. But if you're Minnesota, you focus in on one thing and one thing only: beating Anaheim. I'm guessing they split the game this week, or the games this weekend, with Gustafsson, who's healthy now, and Fleury. I think they'll go Gustafsson Saturday, Fleury Sunday, because it's the more difficult game. I guess we'll have to wait and see what Dean Evison says tomorrow at practice. But these are big points. And you get the Anaheim win, and you find a way to split this road trip. It's four different cities. It's a lot of travel. It's tough buildings like Dallas and Calgary to get it started. And, if you can come home 2-2 on that road trip after a 5-2 homestand, you've got yourself in a very good position right now in the Western Conference. After that terrible start, that first week of the season, the Wild have started to make that climb right now. I hope they can keep building off what they did here these last couple of games.
Jonas Brodin, obviously, as we mentioned, didn't play tonight. It sounds like the hope is more optimistic on him, but as you alluded to, Ryan Hartman not practicing yet. What's the latest on some of these guys that are injured for the Wild currently, and when we can potentially expect to see them back in the lineup?
Well, you hope that Brodin gets back at some point on the road trip, but I think one of the tells that we had this afternoon was the big 6'7" defenseman Schuster we talked about on a podcast earlier this season that made a pretty nice impression in training camp, has been called up, which tells you Brodin's probably not that close, and you have to have some insurance on the road. The good news for Minnesota right now is Alex Goligoski has been quite the story here these last couple of weeks. After missing and being a healthy scratch for weeks, he is back in the lineup and making solid contributions. I like the calming presence he brings to Kalen Addison. That pair has been good. I thought Middleton and Spurgeon tonight were rock solid together. And you're seeing Matt Dumba's game quietly start to come together. He really had a tough first month of the season, but now he's starting to find his confidence. And so, it's tough to not have 25. And if he makes the trip, that's good news, because you look at the back end of this trip, when you go back to back again with Edmonton and Vancouver, that's when you need some extra bodies and maybe a skilled player like Jonas Brodin. It was weird because he had battled back after an illness, played that game and played so well. And then all of a sudden it's no practice for him the next day, and it's an injury. And, the one thing that I kind of thought about is maybe it's a soft tissue issue. So hopefully he's okay. It sounds like he's going to be on the road trip, and that's step one to getting him back on the ice with the Minnesota Wild.
Well, and the positive thing, in addition to the win to take from tonight, is that it looked like the GREEF Line got through unscathed. I know Jordan Greenway did kind of block a shot up high, but beyond that, I think everybody withstood what they had to do against Edmonton. So it looks like while Brodin will be out, the GREEF Line is getting back to where we can use them as that top defensive weapon again.
Might not be as big a factor on Saturday against Anaheim, but boy, if the Wild can get them cranking Sunday in Dallas against some of their high-end talent, that kid Robertson is an elite player, 21 on Dallas, is someone you're going to have to mark. And that line, I just think tonight looked like the line of old. Physical, winning faceoffs, making big plays, frustrating those top weapons from Edmonton. Now, again, the Wild had the advantage of last change on home ice. You're not going to have that in Dallas on Sunday. But Dean Evason and this coaching staff have been very creative the way they've been able to deploy that line, and we haven't really seen them together much this year. So tonight was the acid test against one of the most skilled lines in hockey, and I thought they really had a great game, so they should be feeling good about what they put out there and hopefully a chance to maybe make an impact this weekend as well.
Minnesota Wild win 5-3 against Edmonton and have a chance to finish the homestand 5-2 with the game against Anaheim coming up on Saturday. That will do it for tonight's Locked On Wild postcast. As always, Kevin, thank you for the time joining us after Wild wins and Wild games in general this year. For Wild fans, make sure you check out Locked On Wild. We keep you up to date on everything Minnesota Wild related throughout the season. You can find new episodes there every Monday through Friday as part of the Locked On Sports Podcast Network.